Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Goodbye Lotus, Hello Cloud. We have two outstanding speakers today. First, Dick Saplar, Senior Research Analyst at Aberdeen Group. Dick has over 25 years of experience in the computing industry and has held several senior positions in roles such as business management, digital operations, and product management. In addition, we are fortunate to have with us John Johnson, the Vice President of Licensing for ASCAP. John is going to share his experiences of migrating ASCAP from Lotus Notes to the cloud with Force.com. This is our safe harbor statement. Any forward-looking statements or future features discussed on today's webinar should not be used to make purchase decisions. Please refer to our website should you want more information on the safe harbor statement. Next slide, please. For today's webinar, we have an exciting packed agenda. Dick is going to discuss the changes that have taken place in the computing industry and specifically discuss on-premise solutions like Lotus Notes and why many companies are making the shift to cloud computing, including sharing some of the recent studies from Aberdeen. Then John will share his experiences at ASCAP, first with Lotus Notes and then after migrating to Force.com. We'll tell you how you can learn more about migrating your Lotus Notes apps to Force.com, and then we will close with Q&A. At any time during the webcast, please use the chat function in the GoToWebinar and type in your questions, and at the end we will address as many as we can. With that, I'll pass it over to you, Dick, to get started.
Great. Thanks, Shauna. As Shauna said, I've been in the computer industry for about 25 years and have lived through most of the new architectural changes that have come on the scene. If you were in the computing industry in the 60s, you would have been working on a mainframe, probably from IBM or Unisys or Sperry. And then in about the 70s, the whole infrastructure of the data center changed to more of a focus on mini computers. Companies such as Digital, Wang, Data General, most of them based in the Boston area, were providing most of the computing power at that time. It's interesting to note that not one of those companies still exists today. And then by the time networks really started to become more reliable, then we were able to start breaking the application up into different pieces, then having those pieces being processed on different servers. So a concept called client-server architecture was developed where the user interfaces could be run on desktops, for example, and the database could be run on a server at another location. Today, most of you are familiar with the Internet style of computing. And really, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to break that up into two different trends. The first one really is desktop Internet computing, which is the use of a web browser to access data that's out on the World Wide Web. That really came about in the 90s, signified by companies like Amazon and Google, Yahoo, and so forth. But we're really starting to enter a new phase of the Internet revolution, and that's the concept of mobile computing. Instead of using a web browser, we're using smartphones. It's mobile aware. You download applets that do particular tasks that you want to do, and then when you're done, you delete those applications. So it was interesting to see that last weekend on an advertisement on TV, Comcast is now starting to offer applets for your TV. You download these applets onto your TV, you use them as long as you want them, and then delete them. So the point I wanted to make is that the last three architectural approaches really are advances in networking, that LANs and WANs have become robust enough to allow you to depend on servers and applications running outside of your main data center inside of your building. And that trend is just obviously going to continue. So companies can now leverage applications and servers that are located in places that make much more sense than, on floors of buildings in large cities. You can now locate your data center, next to the Hoover Dam or someplace where the electricity costs are much less. So we're really able to get, leverage the economy of scale and the new technologies. And one last point I'd like to make on this slide is that cloud does not necessarily equal virtualization. This can be a part of it. VMware is they have 2,000 service providers that use VMware for hosting, but there are other technologies that allow for hosting of applications, And the one that's really the strongest one is the multi-tenancy architecture that Salesforce.com uses. So there's a very nice white paper on Salesforce.com's website that describes this technology. And if you're not familiar with it, I'd suggest that you take a look at it. It really is a cutting-edge technology. So we talked about client-server architecture, and it's significant to note that many of the applications that were originally developed in that client-server architecture are still around today. And as an example, Lotus Notes. Lotus was originally based on a message board technology that was prevalent in the 70s. And in the 80s, it was rewritten into a client-server architecture and became the product that we know today. In the 90s, some web capabilities were added with the addition of Domino. And so the software has evolved over time, but it still is based on really an old architecture. It's interesting to note that Lotus was actually in existence before the founder of Facebook was even born. So there's really, this technology has come a long way, and there are a lot of legacy applications that are still using the old client-server technology. The applications are still software-based, which means you have version issues. You have to have multiple deployments on multiple servers. You have to have version controls. You have to schedule upgrades and do data backups and all of those sorts of issues. So those are really issues that were settled in the 80s, and you can now step into the 21st century and have your technology based on the newest technology. So really, what are the value propositions of cloud computing? First and foremost, no data center and no hardware. That's really the key. No servers to buy, manage, upgrade, or service. No data backup, archiving, recovery, and no disaster recovery planning and testing and utilization. All of that is completely out of the picture when you use this multi-tenancy architecture and cloud-based applications. The second point is that there's no software stack. There's no security issues. There's no middleware. There are no user interfaces, no version controls, no testing, interoperability, training, user interfaces, all of that sort of stuff that you have to do for those who are very familiar with software development. So you really have no hardware stack. You have no software issues. And since you have no hardware to buy or data centers to manage, really what you've done is instead of having capital expenditures to buy hardware, what you've done is by renting the applications on Salesforce.com or Force.com, you're shifting your expenses from capital to operational. You get a monthly bill that you can control and you can and manage without having to invest for a 3-year time horizon and depreciate server hardware. You still have the customization freedom with Force.com, and Force.com is a great application to support mobile users. As long as they can get to the web, they have full application access, whereas having to have a VPN and come through the firewall to get to the application running on a server behind the firewall. Also with Force.com, the data is centralized. You don't have multiple disparate implementations on servers located around the company or around the world. All the data resides in one place. So reporting is much easier. Keeping the data organized and collected in one location is really key. So really, in short, you get what's called fast time to production. That any changes you want to make on your application, you can do it immediately, and all users see it. And if you want to add a new module to Force.com, literally within days it's there for you to use. You don't have to schedule out and plan to add it to the server, then do upgrades and data backup and so forth. So really, fast time to production is a key benefit for cloud-based applications. So I would like to take a moment here and let you know why this is really important. At Aberdeen, which is a research firm based in Boston, Massachusetts, we do end-user surveys, and we look at technology trends as they've been deployed with real end users. So we look at new technologies and new trends, and we ask real customers, real end users, about their experiences. So we can write about real-world results. And earlier this year, we ran a survey on Web 2.0, which is equivalent to cloud computing, and had about 270 organizations respond and tell us about their deployments. And what we found in collaboration software, that companies that used a web-based collaboration tool had a 34% reduced time to project completion. That means that on average, they brought their projects to completion 1/3 faster than those that were using server-based or more traditional software. Also, those companies had about a 22% shorter time to issue resolution. People knew where the data was, they knew how to find it, they knew how to look it up, and so they were about 20% faster in solving issues with the web-based collaboration tools. And finally, enterprises that used web-based collaboration, their training costs were reduced by 14%. All of this is because of the centralization and the standardization of a web-based tool. Organizations are reporting that their workforces are now globalized, that they need a single place where everybody can get into no matter where they are in the world. The workforce turnover is increasing as well. So it's very important to capture the data from companies, from employees as they use it, as they create it. It's all in one place, and it adds to the corporate memory. Web 2.0 browser tools are easy. They're recognizable. They're easy to use. Anyone with access to the internet can get to the data, and single sign-on, and they're right there. So a single location accessible by all users is really key to web-based collaboration, and Salesforce is really at the leading edge of this technology. With that, I'd like to introduce John Johnson, who's Vice President of Licensing for ASCAP. John?
Oh, thank you, Dick. You know, one of the things that you said, I hadn't heard you say this before, but that the founder of Facebook was not even born when Lotus Notes came into existence. That really makes me feel very old, so thanks a lot for that. I am with ASCAP. I've been with ASCAP for 15 years, and for those that don't know, ASCAP has been around for 96 years. As a matter of fact, in 2014, we'll be celebrating our centennial birthday. And we're a pretty unique business in that what we do is we collect royalties for songwriters and publishers. And for those of you who were enjoying that fine classical music before this call began, if it had been something along the lines of a Twisted Sister or something else like that, that would have been a licensable musical performance. And what we do is we license that music and collect the fees whenever that music is performed in the public, and we distribute it to our members who are songwriters and publishers. We have evolved over the past, especially over the past 96 years, but since I've been here in past 15 years, we started off with 26 district offices across the United States. And those 26 district offices each had their own sales staff, their own administrative staff, and very labor-intensive processes. And when I first came on board at ASCAP back in 1995, we were beginning a migration, or we're finishing up the migration from those district offices and starting to utilize this new technology called Lotus Notes. And we had purchased Lotus Notes and had rolled that out to our field staff and reorganized the department from 26 district offices down to 4 regional virtual offices, if you will, by using groupware Lotus Notes. And the way that we were able to configure it is we had each region on a separate server. Each server had a total of 5 different databases that worked together. They had a directory of all of the licensees in that region, an active directory, a licensed account database, a litigation database, and an active database. 4 regions with servers with 20 databases, and there was a codes database that worked outside of all of that, so to give us a total of 21 databases. And with those 21 databases, they weren't integrated with each other, much less any of the other legacy systems that we have, such as an accounting system for all of our existing customers for their billables and all of that information. So it became over time very, very inflexible, very difficult to make any changes to it. The way that we would have to take a snapshot of our data, if we wanted to see where we were as a business, we'd have to have all of our users replicate their data, and we encourage them to replicate twice a day If they replicated more than that, we would end up with all kinds of rep-save conflicts and all kinds of data integrity issues. We'd have to get them all to replicate, export all of that data into an access database or some other SQL server, and then pull together that data into some type of analysis. And as those of you who have lived through that, to pull all of that together sometimes can take you a week or longer to just get a snapshot that you need for MIS reporting for your business of how it's doing. So the databases over time became very hard to manage. Along with the hard to manage data, we had issues with keeping up with all of the changes in technology. We first got onto Lotus Notes, and we were utilizing a database and a tool that was written in Lotus script. And then they started upgrading. We started with Lotus Notes version 1.2 or 1.3, if I remember correctly, and eventually we got it updated to version 3. By the time we got off in 1995, I think we're at version 6. And any time we made a change, we had to involve Lotus Notes developers and programmers to build views and make any other changes that we needed programmatically to adapt with the business. That led into a backlog of change requests with our IT department, and it became even more expensive. Along with those upgrades, every time we would need to upgrade our software, then we had to also consider the laptops and the hardware that was out in the field. What was the operating system? Will the operating system behave properly with the version of Lotus Notes that we have? What are the requirements of the software and the hardware? Will they behave correctly? And so we were generally at least 2 years behind whatever the latest greatest was, and our hardware was always struggling to keep up with the rest of the technology. So as you know, as I'm saying, it became increasingly more difficult to keep up with the changes in technology that were taking place in the real world, as it were. Go to the next slide, and I'll show you. This was a typical view that we had of one of our Lotus Notes databases, and any time that we wanted to look up any place, we would have to enter in the first initials of the place that we were looking for, and we were pretty limited into how we could retrieve information based on the views that a developer had built for us. And so a field person became very, very adept at those few views that they had, and so they were locked into that. And as far as management, we were locked into those views to be able to summarize the information as well. And as I said, there were 20 databases that we had to take into account. So anytime we wanted to pull together the information, it was really pull up a database, get your total, write it down, plug it into a spreadsheet, or export all the data and do it that way. So it's migrating over to Salesforce to show you just a snapshot of a couple of the things that we use today in this next slide. Our world has changed into that of dashboards, dashboard components, and views that users can have a lot more control over themselves. Administrators, which are no longer developers, but more of the business analyst type of person, can build a view, roll that out to a group of users so that it will fit in with what they need, and it's a lot easier for them to be able to customize to specifically what they need. The dashboard components, every team that we have, every sales team that we have, and one of the sales teams that you're looking at there is Guitar Town Heroes. Being in the music business, we really play on those names sometime. But that's our Nashville-based team, and that's a view that they would use, and they can drill down on the dashboard component and get to the item level detail that supports all of that. Go to our next slide. This is just a snapshot picture of some of the custom applications, and that's one of the surprise aha factors that we got. When we logged in with Salesforce.com and made that decision, one of the things we were really trying to do was replace our sales processes, and as a bonus, we got development on the Force.com platform of being able to customize applications. I started with an application for a time-off database because we had another database. I would have made database number 22 time off database where our users would actually log in their time off request, and it stopped working about 2 months after we migrated off of Lotus Notes for our main application. So I said, okay, let me build this on the Force.com platform. And I built an application for the time off database to replace the Lotus Notes database. I built it myself as a business analyst and built it in probably about 6 or 7 hours. And it included time off tracking, formulas to calculate how much time each person had, and an approval process for managers to be able to be alerted whenever a new time off request was made. They could approve or reject that time. After building that, I was then able to integrate that along with the equipment that employees had that they were assigned. So we could track their serial numbers and which equipment was assigned to which person. We could track the training that each employee went through. So we built all of that custom from scratch in just a matter of hours in rolling out those applications. Our business is very unique, and as such, we have some unique things to our business that I needed to also build applications to support. One of those is a litigation tracking system, and we integrate that in with the other objects in Salesforce. So we have the account object in our Salesforce instance, and the litigation object is able to tie right into that. So everything is fully integrated with everything else on the Force.com platform. We also have other applications that we purchase from third parties, including a document management application that we call Loop. And then also we've recently started using Google Maps as another third-party application where we can map all of our customer data, and reps can go in and route their day utilizing Google Maps. So they can get a picture of the business before they actually go to it by using the mapping software from Google. So all of that was added benefits that were added onto it that we would not have had had we stuck with the Lotus Notes platform. Next slide. The results that we've had is really we were able to deploy it. The total time that it took for us to deploy was closer to about 6 or 7 months. From the time that we actually started the deployment process. Most of that time was trying to figure out how we were going to get the data out of Lotus Notes. As far as real time to actually build out the application and to do all the customization that our very unique business required on the Force.com platform was really probably only about a week. It was really not that long of a time to customize the Force.com platform because that's what it's there for. That's how it was designed. Most of the time, as I said, was required to get it out of Lotus Notes. Cost savings included we retired 4 Lotus Notes servers, and that means that we were also able to no longer have to have the administrative Lotus Notes administrators to be able to support those servers. The Lotus Notes developers to do the customizations to the application that we needed in order to even hire a new person and realign a territory. That was something that would take us 3 months before. It takes us a few minutes to do that today. Administrative staff, we were able to reduce administrative staff to do printing of our documents from 5 people down to 2, and at the same time increase our volume from 600 to 3,000 offers per week from that same amount of staff. The time to build a laptop for new users from 2 days down to 1 hour. 95% of our development is now done by business analysts who are closer to the business processes, so they're able to walk hand in hand with the people who are actually doing the work and get the customizations that they specifically need to do their job in real time versus weeks and waiting for change requests to come down the pike. Effortless upgrades also is a biggie for us. We are in the process of hopefully rolling out the last laptop purchase for our remote field staff that we plan to do, because I see that we are moving to a day and age when we have the ability to give to our users the choice. If they would rather work off of their own personal Macintosh, or, Apple laptop or iPad or whatever it is that they want to use, the infrastructure is there. They can use whatever machine they want to use and that they're most comfortable with and just access the web. All they need is an up-to-date web browser, and they're off and running. So that's where I see everything going with this. So that's basically our story.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that, sharing all that insight with the audience. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation back to Shauna.
Thank you. Thanks, Dick and John, for sharing your research and experiences. That was fantastic. As a next step, we invite everybody today on the call to learn more about migrating your Lotus Notes apps to Force.com. We are offering a free migration kit to all attendees, and what this includes is a free 2-hour assessment with a Force.com expert, a business case calculator so you can kind of actually quantify the cost savings of using Force.com versus Lotus Notes or other on-premise platforms, and free online training to get you started quickly. So we will send out the presentation as well as this webinar and a link to this kit so you can get started quickly. What I invite the audience to do at this time is to go ahead and type in any questions they have in the GoToWebinar on the sidebar there, and then we can address them as they come through. So we'll just give that a minute. So one question that has come in from one of our audience members is, John, this is more for you, is how many users did ASCAP have?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
How many users does ASCAP have on Force.com?
Today, I believe we're at about 250.
Okay. And John, for you also, do you foresee automating other business processes in your organization onto Force.com? If so, what type?
Absolutely. I've recently, part of that 250 users, we have approximately 190 users that are using the full enterprise version of Salesforce.com, and then we have other users that are using just one application, and it being a total custom application for other departments that are not traditional sales departments. And we use it for doing some processes, and I'll go and throw it out there. It's tracking cue sheets is one of the most recent ones that I've developed, and that is we keep track of the music that's used on television programs. So we have to get those cue sheets of all of the different music intros and outros on a television program, and we keep track of those cue sheets by using a Force.com application. So that's one that I've recently developed, and I'm getting requests from other departments at ASCAP constantly. Hey, how long would it take to do this? So yes.
Okay, excellent. We have another question from an audience member here. Did you actually completely stop using Notes, or did you just move the majority of your business processes to the platform? Is Notes, completely gone from your company, or do you still use it for email or other purposes?
We're still using Lotus Notes for email for approximately 2/3 of our company today. We have recently, in the past 3 months, migrated over to Gmail for our email platform. But email was the last thing to move off of Lotus Notes. But the rest of our organization, the other departments at ASCAP, are still using Lotus Notes. The licensing department, we're trying to make the licensing department be as mobile and flexible as we possibly can, and trying to make it total cloud-based operation. And as I said, we've recently done that by moving over to Gmail in the past couple of months.
Okay, excellent. We have a lot of questions for you, John. Did you evaluate other solutions apart from Force.com with your Lotus to replace Lotus Notes?
Yes. Yes, we did. Evaluated another cloud-based type of CRM application. We settled with Force.com, or we went with Force.com, I guess, because they were definitely the biggest and seemed to be the most stable player, and also getting the best reviews. They had a very impressive customer base when we were doing that evaluation. It just seemed like a whole lot more stable company for us to go with, and for us to make this type of investment and partnership with. And that's the way that we viewed this when we did the migration. It is a partnership with the company, because it's not something that I want to do. I don't want to go through this type of change again in the foreseeable future. It's something that we want to stay with for a while.
Okay.
So yes, we did evaluate that. I also evaluated staying with a different type of customer application, the CRM type of application in Lotus Notes, and getting some of the benefit there. We chose not to do that because when I started looking at the finances of keeping up to date with software releases and building that as part of an image for a remote user, it just didn't make sense for us.
Got it. Thank you. In terms of the rollout and the deployment of Force.com, we have a customer asking if you how that approach was. Did you kind of do a big bang approach, or did you do a phased approach rollout of Force.com?
Yeah, it was our intention to begin with that we were going to do a phased approach of doing like a region of users at a time. And part of the reason that we were wanting to go with that approach was because we were previously on Lotus Notes 4 different regions of users. And while we were 4 different regions of users, those regions were becoming more convoluted as we kept going. So what started off being a Northeast region actually at one point ended up having some parts of the Northeast region that were not really geographically the Northeast. So our regions became very convoluted based on business rules that were changing over the course of time. As we started learning more and more about some of the benefits we were going to get off Force.com, we ended up migrating all of our general licensing enterprise over to Force.com all at once. Since that time, we have migrated other departments at ASCAP over to Force.com, including other departments of licensing, in a more phased approach. So I think the answer is more than we anticipated all at once, and then some phased approach as we've gone on.
Okay, excellent. And we have a customer asking in terms of how has the deployment of Force.com impacted the role of your IT organization with respect to moving to the cloud?
Their role has been they've been able to focus on other enterprise applications, other stuff. Force.com is really handled by the business users, and the only time that I'm reaching out to IT is for some of the integration needs that I have, integrating with other systems, handling other systems that we've had in place and that do other things for us. But as far as the Force.com platform, 95% of the work that we have done have been done by business analyst type of people, point and click type of development.
Great, and I think that kind of leads into the next question, which is how many dedicated Salesforce administrators or developers do you have for your total 250 users? And how does that compare to the number of Lotus Notes administrators or developers you had? Okay,
Lotus Notes developers, when we were, I would say back in the late 90s would be the best point in time to refer back to, is because when we actually had development staff before they started being called off into other projects and all of our development came to a halt back in around 2002, 2003 at that point. But at one point, we had 2 or 3 developers, I'd say about 2 to 2.5 developers that were fully committed to supporting our application in Lotus Notes. Those were Lotus Notes developers, and those of you who know the price tags on those types of employees, it can be pretty hefty. Today, I do some Salesforce.com, Force.com development myself. I have a right-hand person that does the majority of the heavy lifting of the Force.com customizations and build out of applications that are requested by other departments. And then I have 2 other people that work on specific applications, of third-party applications, interfacing with that and doing other projects. So all in all, 2.5 people that are more business analysts that are helping us today.
Fantastic. That's great. And one last question with regards to, the ROI for this replacement. I know you did talk a little bit about the results, but maybe you can kind of reiterate some of those points in terms of the ROI and for the replacement of Lotus Notes to Force.com.
I don't have any hard, steadfast ROI figures other than, our productivity revenue has increased, part of it being an increase in sales staff. So all of these things, we had a lot of things that were moving all at the same time. So some of it I can't specifically say it is straight for moving to Force.com, but I will say that had we not made that change, we would not have been able to support the increase in sales staff that we had. Our new business revenue has doubled over the past 3 years since we've migrated over to Force.com. That's huge for us, to say the least.
Definitely.
And it's not something, part of it is the increase in sales staff, but we wouldn't have been able to do that without that migration.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. Well, thank you all again for joining us. Those are all the questions that we have today. So again, thank you, Richard and John, for sharing your experiences. And thank you, audience, for joining us. And you will receive information from us as far as the recording webinar, as well as how to get started with the migration kit. Thanks, everybody.